Thank you for joining me to discuss all that's happening in media this week. There's this huge thing happening. I think this is a very big deal because this is a lot of folks
Okay. Wait,
could be affected.
before we continue, Don, there was something I wanted to do before we got started.
Yeah.
And I know this is a surprise to you, but I wanted to present you with a great honor. It's the Tommy Christopher Peace Prize for you, Don Lemon. For you, you can take this wherever you want. And it's just for embodying the spirit of peace that Tommy Christopher is all about. So I'm going to put this in the mail to you right away. Sorry,
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So you're a nut.
sorry.
Look, let's talk about this merger between Warner Brothers and Netflix. This is something that was surprising. Look, it was always in the background, but most people thought that it was going to be Paramount, right? The Ellisons that would somehow acquire Warner Brothers. It is a very big deal. Take us behind the scenes. What do you know?
Well, yeah, this is the entire media industry has got like merger mania, and it looks to me like this thing's going to happen, and I do expect that look, I'm one of these people for a media reporter, it's a little bit weird, but I don't worry as much about consolidation as I do about like who is doing the consolidating. So like uh, I'd rather have Netflix be with Warner than with Paramount, for example, because of the way things are going over there and what they're doing to CBS. Um, so I don't think it's the worst thing that can happen. And I have this sort of as a consumer, I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe my Netflix and my HBO Max will go down. They'll put them together, and I can get everything on one app.
So what happened, Tommy? Because again, the odds-on favorite was Paramount. The Ellisons are close to Donald Trump. It's believed that merger would be the one that would get immediate approval because of the relationship, and this relationship is quite the opposite. So I think folks believe that this is going to have tough. They're going to have a tough time getting this approved. However, so what happened? How did it go from Paramount to Netflix all of a sudden in one fell swoop?
Well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. I think part of it could have to do with some of the backlash that we're seeing from all the Paramount merger stuff. But I mean, who really knows? And really, until it's a done deal, I wouldn't even put too much stock in it. I mean, like these days, the way things go, you just don't know what's going to happen until it happens.
Yeah. Do you think that this is gonna be drawn out? Because I remember I was at CNN during the AT&T merger. Let's see, when I got there, who owned it? I can't remember. It was Warner. It was Warner Media, Turner,
No,
Turner
right, yeah.
Media, and then it became then AT&T. And then after AT&T, it was bought by Warner Brothers Discovery, which is who owns it now. But it took the the completion of the deal between AT&T and what was it, AT&T and Warner a long time because Donald Trump wouldn't approve it forever. So do you think this one's going to take as long?
Well, I think that there's not. I don't think there are as many complicating factors with this one. I think that and I think he wants to be seen as pro business and not standing in the way of things. And I don't see what the complicating factor would be here. I mean, with Paramount, you had stuff like the Stephen Colbert thing, the 60 Minutes thing, and the lawsuits. I don't really see there being a factor like that here.
You don't. But the relationship, what is it, Ted Sarandis and I forget who the other person who's involved, but apparently because the other person is a big Democratic donor, Donald Trump may have an issue with that.
I don't know, 'cause Trump is a Democrat himself from way back. I think, you
Not
know,
now.
yeah, exactly. That's true. But Trump is very much one of these. He's a transactional guy, and so I mean, you saw what happened with Zoran Mamdani when he went to the Oval Office. All of a sudden, Mamdani's his favorite guy because he was nice to him. So, I don't think Trump is not a partisan in the same way that we think of other people as partisans. So, I mean,
Yeah.
unless this guy has done something to him personally, I don't know. I don't necessarily see it as as that big a complicating factor.
So you don't see it as that big a complicating factor, then how long?
Oh, well, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say a matter of months, not, not more than a year and maybe less than 6 months, you know.
Yeah. I am up to I don't know if it's going to be as easy as you think it is.
But let me
I
hear
think
your thoughts, Don.
well, I just think that it's going to be, Donald Trump is going to try to make a play for, I believe, the Ellisons,
Yeah.
because he's close to them. I think that Donald Trump wants the Paramount to buy it. I think he wants the media to be conservative. I think in the Paramount deal, CNN was in the Paramount deal, and so if David Ellison has dealt, if the Ellisons, David and Larry, and Paramount, if they have CBS and they have CNN, then they have a huge conservative conglomeration or a huge consolidation of conservative media. And I
Yeah.
think that was kind of their dream, and Donald Trump was on board with it. I don't believe that Donald Trump has the same sort of friendly relationships with the people who are on the Netflix side. As a matter of fact, I think it's not so friendly. And Donald Trump is going to want his pals to have it, and he's going to hold it up as long as possible. That's what I believe.
I mean, I guess it depends, how hot, I mean, look, if the Ellisons just aren't making the right bid, he'd be hard pressed, unless if they're that hot to spend the money. Um, I just don't see it, you know.
Okay, we'll see. You want to make a bet? You want to put a bet on this, Tommy Christopher? And then
I
because
guess,
we're
you know
going to
what I
talk
will
again.
do? I will bet you your Tommy Christopher Peace Prize. Okay. So if you win, you get to keep it. And if I win, then you have to send it back to me. All right.
So let me ask you then. This is what people have been asking me, and I don't really have the answer to that. But included in the Paramount deal was CNN. CNN is not included in this Netflix deal. So what happens to them? Are they a spinoff, a la a SpinCo,
Right.
like
Like
MSNBC, MS Now?
MS now. Exactly. Yeah. Although, yes, this is a short answer. Although it's a much different, it's a much bigger operation. CNN has such global reach and, our multi-platform reach. But yeah, I think, constructively it would be the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
then
well, you
what
know what?
happened?
That might be the best thing for them. Um, sort of getting ahead of what we were talking about. I think a lot of people are concerned, and there's certainly, I hear from inside CNN, people are concerned about, the new CEO and the direction things have been going since Trump took over. I mean, they got rid of our friend Jim Acosta, and you know, the big stars there are now people like Scott Jennings, and a lot of people are concerned about that. And I think, if they were their own thing, maybe that some of that effect might wear off.
But essentially, I would say, wait, look, I would probably say yes to you, but essentially, if they're not included in this deal, they're still owned by the same company, and the same people will be heading those companies. What is it? Who's running CNN now? Is it Gunnar Wiedenfels, right? Because
Yeah.
David Zaslav is no longer
Right.
there. David Zaslav is over HBO and the big, tent stuff. And then I think Gunnar Gunther, I don't know, Gunther, whatever. Gunnar Wiedenfels is over CNN and sort of their linear stuff. So they essentially have the same boss, and I would imagine under the same boss, there's the same edict because it's the same people who are in place. It's Ed and John Malone. John Malone still is the biggest shareholder, I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this really means anything for CNN, except they're still out there on a limb by themselves, kind of.
Yeah, but well, that's obviously, it's assuming that everybody who's in place now stays in place. So I think if there was a spinoff, that there might be some rethinking.
Yeah.
Because I don't think things have gone especially well for them since Trump, came back into office. I don't think they're setting the world on fire and thinking, oh well, what a great success this is, and let's do more of this. And I think if they got spun off, that would be an opportunity. Let's call it.
But they're already
Um,
spun off. I mean, Warner Brothers spun them off,
right.
like they did with like Comcast did with MSNBC. They're spun them off to Spinco, and this one is spun off. I don't know what they call it. I'm not sure what the Gunnar Wiedenfeld's company
Oh,
is,
okay.
but they're already spun off.
Well, then maybe that'll be an opportunity. I mean, I think they need. I think they need to course correct. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, why do you say that?
Well, because I've been hearing on I actually was I tweeted out one of your videos earlier this week, and it was you accepting at the Route 100 gala. And I noticed that a lot of people in the comments were talking about how, as you were speaking, the name Abby Phillips, she was up next, and that it almost seemed like the thing that you were saying about not doing the both sides thing was almost they like directed at her. And I've been hearing a lot of that criticism when I've done interviews with people lately about stuff like the debate program where it's like her and Scott Jennings or her and some other Trump person, and people saying that they think it's bad for America,
Yeah.
and I think there's a backlash to that. And I don't see that I haven't heard that it's been a killer for ratings.
Yeah. Well, let me just say I'm not on social media that way. I have someone who helps me with my social media. But I don't live, obviously I'm not in a cocoon or under a rock. I understand the sentiment out there. Let me just say, look, in all fairness, I think Abby is an incredible journalist. She's very likable. She's obviously
Yeah.
gorgeous and smart. When I was at CNN, Scott Jennings was for the most part a sort of level-headed conservative. He would have his moments, as everyone does. I had mine. Actually, one of the people who reached out to me with a kind word when I left was Scott Jennings. So, but to be honest, I have not watched, and I haven't watched CNN in quite some time, and I haven't watched cable news in quite some time because it's frustrating. I do see some of the clips, but you mentioned Abby. I have been saying this when I worked at CNN. I talked about. There, my dog's going crazy.
That's
When I worked at CNN, I was saying the same thing about false equivalence and election deniers and insurrection deniers. So I had the same sort of
right.
sentiment. So I don't think it was a surprise to anyone standing on that stage that I said what I said. But I do understand how people feel about arguing on television, and it has been that way for quite some time.
Yeah.
I don't participate in those kinds of things. I don't like to. I would not have a program that did that because I don't think that is helpful or beneficial or constructive for anyone. I do think that you should hear from people who have different beliefs and different political persuasions, but I don't think that you book those people just to fight. I think it must be organic and people must be respectful in that.
Right.
That is one reason why I don't go on the sort of what Kara Swisher calls the round table of hate, which is that Jubilee show.
Right.
I'm not going to be like Don Lemon, goes up against such and such and such and such. I think that's beneath me too. I don't think it's constructive. It's kind of not Jerry Springer. Who was the guy back in the 80s? I forget that used to have the late night talk show that people used to throw chairs or fight at each other. I forgot.
Yeah, Jerry, Morton Downey,
Morton Downey
There was a
Jr.
bunch of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think it's an old formula that just keeps getting, reconstituted, and it doesn't work. So look, yeah. So I'm not sure what people are saying in the comments, but that was not I wasn't directing that to anyone particularly in that room.
Right.
But if people are doing that, then I would. If Abby talked to me, I'd have to tell her like, I don't agree with it, but I'd have to really watch her show to
Right.
to offer some constructive criticism to her.
Yeah, you know what? Well, here's the thing. Like, I bring this up because this is what I keep hearing from people. I like her show. And I feel like, the thing I like about it is that somebody, Scott Jennings or whoever, it's not always him, but there's always some Trump stooge there, and they almost always just get knocked around the whole time. And Abby is really pretty, really, really good at just calling it out. The difference
What is the
being that,
point of that then? I don't
well,
understand the
yeah,
point of it because there are people. What I said in my speech is that we don't have to. What did I say? I said we don't have to give our platforms over to people who come on just to demean, just to distract, just to lie and obfuscate, because it's too critical a time in our country where our rights are being taken away. And the people who are writing our stories, and that was specifically a Black event that
right,
celebrated Black people in media, where people are trying to write us out of history. So I think that we're in an incredible moment. Those things may have been fun. We had the luxury to do them maybe a while ago, but we don't have that luxury now because people are coming onto platforms just to lie, and they know they're going to lie, and they also know that they're going to get their moment, and that's going to help them their career. It's going to be expedient for their career, expedient for them politically, and so they come on just for that moment. And if you're coming on for a social media moment, then you're going to do all that you can to have that moment, and it's not so authentic. And that's why I think it is not constructive. It is not constructive. And I don't just mean that. I'm not just talking about whatever Abby's doing or Scott Jennings or CNN or whatever. I mean on any other program where they do that. And I believe right now, MAGA and the people who support Donald Trump and come on television, they are coming on just to lie, just to have their moment, just to posture for the president. And I think that it's disingenuous. It's bad for the culture. It's bad for America. And ultimately, it's bad for the world. We need journalists who can stand up to the very people that they are talking about. We need journalists where it's not going to be filtered through the corporation and the company. It's not so much the journalist, although I believe the journalists should stand up for each other. When I watch these press briefings, I'm like, oh my gosh, why is it the next person asking the question that the person before them asked? Or why when he says something about quiet piggy, like every woman in the room isn't screaming or every guy isn't standing up for the reporter that he's calling piggy? I mean, look at Donald Trump's size, and he's not a small man. If anybody is piggy, it would be Donald Trump. But I don't think that the problem so much is with the journalists. They could stand up for each other. They could be stronger with Caroline Levitt. They could push back a little more. They could not worry about not getting access or not pissing off their bosses. I think the problem is with the gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers are the owners of the companies. Like you mentioned, Ellison and Paramount, they are trying to instill a certain narrative into the culture, a conservative narrative, one that's about ideology, whether it's politically or religious as well. And I don't think that that's good for the country. I think we need honesty. I don't think we need people trying to push or move the needle for a network left to right or any sort of, whether it is pro-Jewish, anti-Jewish, Zionist, Catholic. And I just don't believe that is in journalism. So the problem is with the gatekeepers. And if the gatekeepers are the people that we're supposed to be holding accountable, the owners of corporations, the oligarchs, the owners of the companies, the barons, the people who are in political office, and even the president of the United States, you cannot do that if the same person who's owning you are the same people that you are reporting on. And so I think that the corporations should stay out of the journalism because it should not be the information should not be filtered through a bias of a company. That's
absolutely. But here's the dilemma, because I do struggle with this because, like I said, I'm a fan of partially because it's my job. I need good clips, for my job. But
so you're contributing to the problem, Tommy. Is that what you're saying?
I guess so. I don't know. But well, here's the thing. Let me ask you this, okay? Because what we have here is an asymmetry, is what we're describing. So the problem with, the other side will say, well, why don't you just don't want to talk to people who disagree with you. But the problem is that they won't agree on facts. And, a less kind way of saying that is that they lie. And so if one side is doing all this lying and the other side isn't, then how do you answer the question, how can we move forward if we can't talk to each other? So how do we talk to each other if all one side does is lie?
Well, you can talk to each other. And you can have people on who disagree, but I think that if you know the people who are going to come on and posture and who are the people who are just lying, it's really not about speaking to people who disagree with you at all. That's not the problem. The problem is that if the company, as I said before, if they're trying to move the needle of a news organization in a certain direction, if the people who are coming on understand that's what's wanted, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to prune and preen and, oh my gosh, and whatever, and lie, because they know that is either going to get them a bigger paycheck, that's going to get them more time on the air, that's also going to grant them some sort of in with the administration. So people know all of those things in the backs of their mind. Whereas if it's just about the journalism, as it was when I was there, at least for the first 16 years that I was there, then you have more organic conversations. What is happening on television now with people sitting around tables and whatever, that's as old as journalism. Look, CNN had Crossfire. The Jubilee does that. So that is nothing new. I had big roundtables. People would laugh at us when they were like, "Oh my God, how many people can you fit on the screen for the airplane or for a political panel?" So that's nothing new. The thing is that's new now is that people are trying to move um, news networks into a certain direction, and that is causing the bias and for people to come on to try to make a moment for themselves. And that is what's not constructive because no one is looking out for the truth. They're just looking out for themselves.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I guess I don't have all the answers, but I think if you're going to have somebody come on the air, I mean, I'm glad at least to have them get called out. I wish they get called out more strongly. But
Yeah.
here's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. Um, because one of the big things. See, here's the thing. I don't know how much regular media coverage, but you see clips. The way that the Trump went after Somali migrants in
Right.
Minneapolis, he just went on this super racist rant, and I don't know. I'm sure you covered that on your show. Um, I feel like they're not enough. Eh, the mainstream networks and the mainstream media have not been very good about calling out what a like horrific, blatant racist rant that was. And I
My point about what I just said before.
go ahead. Yeah,
Well, I think people are nervous because I think the journalists are in a really tough position right now. Look, I think obviously I think CNN is the best journalist in the world. But I think it's a tough position right now because I think people at all the networks are concerned about how much they push back. They're concerned about how much they criticize and, to what degree they criticize and what they say. And so I think that people are probably, second guessing, third guessing, fourth guessing themselves before the words even come out of their mouths. And so, if your job is in jeopardy, everybody has a mortgage or rent or kids to feed or,
yeah,
bills to pay. And so that can affect the quality and the content. And so I think that's when so you're kind of proving my point when you say that. Why doesn't it get called out? I think it would be called out even more if people weren't afraid to criticize this president. I think what he said about Somalia, I think that is disqualifying to be a president of the United States. Donald
yeah,
Trump and his family, they're immigrants as well. They were immigrants as well. Most of us are immigrants to this country, except for African Americans, who are the only people who did not come here voluntarily. So, I think that calling a sitting member of Congress garbage and calling Somalia garbage, it goes back to the whole thing about shithole countries. It's not.
yeah.
It's racist. It's vulgar. It's beneath the dignity of the White House. It is sexist, and quite frankly, it's just gross. And Donald Trump seems like a gross, um, bigoted, racist piece of shit.
Wow. Tell me how you really feel, Don.
I can say
Um,
that now because that's how I feel. And look, if someone called someone I knew garbage or me garbage, then hey, I'm giving him the same energy. He goes, I hate to say this. So if he can speak that way, if he can say shithole countries, I can say the same word.
yeah.
Why can't I do it? And why can't the journalist do it? Because that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I actually I also wanted to get your thoughts on I don't know if you saw it, but earlier today CNN talked to a guy in Minneapolis, a Somali migrant, and he said that he supported Trump and he was mad. And he said, he told him, he said, I have 5 children and my children aren't garbage. And then, he was sort of like calling Trump out. But then he said, we campaign for you and we see hope in you. And, he sort of still seemed like he wants to like Trump. I don't know what you make of that.
Well, look, I've spoken to Somalis, to Somalian Americans as well. I actually did quite a long, extensive interview with Ilhan Omar just a couple months ago in Washington D.C., where we talked about Donald Trump. You should look it up on the Don Lemon Show, the Don Lemon
Mhm.
channel on YouTube, and check it out. And I thought it was quite an extensive and an eye-opening interview, which will explain some of what is happening with Donald Trump right now. But I think it's the same thing with Latino, Hispanic immigrants who supported Donald Trump. They're disillusioned now, but I think that they were also misinformed, perhaps before and during the election process, and now
Okay.
they fucked around and they found out. And I think that those Somalians who supported Donald Trump have done the same thing. And perhaps that is a failure on us, the media, to not that we haven't really informed people enough, that we, we feel that we bring false equivalence. If you feel like if you
Right.
say something that's critical of Donald Trump or MAGA, then you must say something critical about Democrats or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. And some things are just objectively bad. And I think most people know that the objectively bad side, the side that's not rooted in facts mainly or truth, is one side. And it's not that Democrats are always telling truth, they're always rooted in truth, but they're at least they are more so now than the MAGA folks. And and they're not pushing people to, to riot the Capitol or into political violence. It's quite the opposite. So I think that's maybe a failure on everybody's part, the politicians' part, and even the media's part, and also the people who are grown people who have allowed themselves to be co-opted by such rhetoric or the lack of information from the media.
Do we have time to talk about one more thing?
You can talk about whatever you want.
All right,
This
good,
is
good.
our time. Nobody's saying go to commercial. There's nobody in my ear saying go to break.
Cool.
All right,
I haven't talked to you in forever, Don. It's been a long time. Yeah. I'm really glad we can do this. So, this is the thing so the other big thing this week is these drug strikes. These strikes on these alleged drug boats.
Venezuela.
Yeah, and so here is what I've been thinking. First of all, I feel like there's a way too much like ambiguity about whether or not this was a war crime. I think it's pretty clear at this point. And the other thing is, I feel like the way that they killed these survivors, I think this has shifted the conversation in a way that I don't think is because they're saying, that this one strike where they killed the survivors is bad, but it's like all of the strikes, they haven't provided any evidence. And even if they have evidence that these were drug boats, that's not a death penalty crime. And I feel like the whole enterprise is illegal. And that conversation is getting lost now because they call that the Overton window, I think, right? Where they just move the frame of the conversation. So now we're not questioning the strikes. Now we're only questioning the strikes where they obliterate these survivors. I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not the Overton window is when the aperture or well, I mean, it's just what people find normal, where the conversation, there were some things that you could not discuss in the Overton window gets wider, or what's acceptable and what's not. This is more obfuscation and distraction, because it doesn't matter if they were drug dealers. It doesn't matter if they were doing something bad. What Donald Trump, and they understand it. That's why every time he's asked about it, he talks about, these are the number of people we saved, how many lives we saved. This is how bad fentanyl is, even though Venezuela is not a huge, producer of fentanyl, if any, right? So he is doing that because he knows that that's like, the biggest deaths are with fentanyl or whatever, and it's so dangerous. So it's not that. It's none of those things. If they are drug dealers and they deserve whatever punishment is coming to them, but that's not the thing. He has to, what the Trump administration and people who work for the Defense Department and our military and our admirals, our generals, all of those people, they have to abide by the military code of justice, by that code of conduct, by the Constitution, by the rules of engagement. Otherwise, we are no better than any dictatorship or authoritarian regime around the country, around the world. And what they're not doing is following the rules, especially if you double tap and you have a second strike and people are clinging to life rafts or to pieces of the boat or whatever it is that they're doing. That is indeed a war crime. And so I don't think it's so much as, the Overton window. I think it's people aren't calling every time he says that in a press briefing or the cabinet meeting or whatever it was. I wanted a journalist to say, that's besides the point, Mr. Trump, President Trump. That's besides the point. The point is did the people in your command and you follow the Constitution, the military code of justice, and the rules of engagement? If they did not, regardless of those people, if they are drug dealers or not, then this is wrong. It is murder and a war crime. But no one says that. Everyone just go, okay. And then they just move on. They go, thank you, media. And they leave the room. It's unbelievable to me that happens. And the one question that I have not heard anyone ask when we're talking about the Epstein files directly, live, in front of a big audience, Mr. Trump, is there anything in those files that show that you did something inappropriate with a young person?
Yeah.
No one is asked. That is a legitimate question. And if he says no, and you say, okay, then why don't you want it released?
Yeah.
That's it. Someone asked Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton had to say, I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. Why won't they ask Donald Trump a very similar question?
Yeah, that's a good question. Although I think that you might be nominating yourself for a Piggy Award with that question.
He would not want to call me Piggy because
Yeah,
I would
no.
have a good answer for him. He's twice the size as me, and anyways.
I shouldn't joke about it. It's actually not. I liked what you had to say about that, about the way he attacked, because he particularly attacks women reporters. And here's something that I was, I feel like not only the fact that other reporters are not standing up for these women, especially women, and the fact that their outlets, by and large, are not standing up for them, puts them in a difficult position, because no reporter wants to become the story, and so no reporter wants to be the one to stand there and go, I this and me that, and they're um, and yet what they're doing is they're enabling him to attack the next one, and they're leaving themselves out to dry.
Guys, well, the next one is like, sir, I mean, she could have asked, sir, why would you call? The next question could have been two questions. I want to please answer the question that I have the same question that my colleague before me had. And also, why would a second follow up? Why do you think it is necessary to call someone out of their name, especially a professional like whoever this was? That's what I would do. Like whoever this was, why do you think it's okay to call her out of her name and to call her a piggy, no less?
Yeah,
And
it was Catherine Lucy from Bloomberg, I believe.
yeah.
And this is, I've been covering the White House for since 2009. Now, obviously, from a distance now. I've been to hundreds of briefings, and uh, you know, there were like 2 or 3 occasions that I can recall where a reporter did exactly what you said. Where the press secretary tried to blow them off, and then the next reporter said, "Okay, well, I'm going to ask my colleague's question." Or another time, one reporter said, you're trying not to call on this person. I'm going to give that person my question. And you don't see that kind of thing anymore. And it's more now more than ever. That's the kind of thing that's needed. You're exactly right. When that happened on Air Force One, the first thing that should have happened, because I know that they heard it, the first thing that should have happened was somebody should have said, "Hold on a second. Who the fuck are you to call her piggy? What's the matter with you?"
Yeah.
You know?
I just said that. I don't know. I don't even know if you
Yeah,
had to use profanity, but yes, I agree with you. And maybe in order to get through to him, maybe you do. And he would say, "You're being disrespectful to the president." And then my answer would be, "Yes, I did that on purpose so you can understand how disrespectful you're being to my colleague."
I mean, Don, you did just call that man a piece of shit like 10 minutes ago. So
I did because I called him. You know why I called him that?
no,
Because he
yes,
called
I know.
someone else garbage.
This is what I'm saying. You might not have needed to use profanity in that situation, but it sure as hell is fun, right?
No, well, it's not that it's fun. It actually
Yeah.
it gets you to understand
Right.
what that words have meaning, and there's feeling behind words.
Yeah.
And so if you call someone garbage, then I'm going to call you something back so you can understand how hurtful that is.
Yeah. I gotta say, I I don't understand how it is that people who still support this man can, because even people who they don't want to be seen as racist. How do you expect not to be seen as racist when you support a man who can call an entire group of people of Somalians, black people, garbage? How do you do that? How do you expect not to be considered racist if you're so obviously okay with that?
Yeah. Well, I think you've answered the question. You can't be.
Except they do.
that's when I told Bill Maher, and I've said this before, it's just before Bill Maher, but that there's a large part of the MAGA movement that's racist. And if they're not racist, they certainly have to overlook a lot of racism in order to support Donald Trump. And so does that make them a racist, or does that make them worse? Because then they have no morals, and there's no, like, what's the cutoff?
Yeah,
Where do you get to the point that says, I can't support this person? And it seems like there is none of that, even for the Christian evangelical part of the, MAGA movement, that there is no cutoff. There is no limit to how either, how much Donald Trump can say or how low he can go.
no, and we've got 3 more years to find out. Just how much lower this guy can go, and I'm afraid that it's going to get bad.
You got anything else for me, Mr. Christopher?
No, I think we covered what we needed to cover.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Thank you for coming on to talk to me
Yeah.
about this, because I've been wanting to speak. But I just want to show you something. I want to tell you. I don't know if you guys are covering it, but make sure that you tune in for this.
Yes.
And that is the Don Lemon Show. The Lemon Nation is going to New Orleans for New Year's Eve. And we're going to party New Year's Eve, New Orleans style. And so make sure you join us. We'll be on all of our platforms. We'll be on YouTube, Twitch, Substack, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and everywhere you get your streaming, you can grab us. So just click on to go to donlemon.com, and you can click on any of our platforms. But it's probably a better watch if you catch us on YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. And if you miss watching Don Lemon do shots on New Year's Eve, now you've got circle the date.
Tommy, it's going to be way more than shots.
Oh,
I have nobody saying, don't do that. Pull back. I just got to call in the control room. They're telling me to get you off the air. No one has ever said that. The whole time I was doing that, there was never anyone saying stop it or whatever. I think people realized for the first, until the last year, until the new regime came in. But I think people realize that New Year's Eve is about fun. No one wants to talk policy or I don't even want to talk politics on New Year's Eve,
Yeah. No, that sounds like a hell of a good time, man. New Year's Rockin' Eve with, I can't say that. That's like copyrighted. But New Year's Eve with Don Lemon. What could be better?
Yeah. Wait till you see the lemon drop on all the surprises that you have.
All right.
Yeah, you got the ball in New York. We're gonna have a lemon drop in.
A lemon drop. Nice. My favorite cocktail.
It's good to see you. Thank you very much. Thanks for informing us. And we'll see you next time. Okay.
Thanks for having me, Don.
Thank you, Tommy Christopher from Mediaite, joining us on the program. We'll see you next time.